a radio good morning or good afternoon, whatever it is. Actually, it's good afternoon. I had something else to do this morning, and so I waited till this afternoon to do my stories. But anyway, the story I wanted to tell was a story that a radio commentator told to a preacher. He said, I got a story to tell you out of my personal experience. He said that some years ago, I was out west at a ranch, and I was out there and I met this cowboy. He was a miserable, short little guy with bandy legs, and but he had found a colt, and he had nurtured the colt and loved the colt, and the colt had grown to be a great stallion, and they loved each other, and they loved each other with a passion. Well, the stallion fell in a gopher hole and sprained his leg, and so they had him out in a pasture. And for some reason, a herd of wild horses were able to break into the pasture. And then when they broke into the pasture, they turned and they bolted, and the stallion went with them. And the little cowboy was miserable because he'd lost his best friend, and he was really, really miserable. And then one afternoon, about 2 days after it happened, somebody came running, and they said, "Hey, we've found your horse! Found your horse! Found your horse! He's out in the canyon out here with a whole raft of wild horses." And so the little cowboy decided that the next morning he'd go down and see if he could win the horse back. And the radio commentator said, I prevailed on him to let me go too. So we walked to where the valley was, and we looked over the edge, and there down in the valley we could see the wild horses and the stallion. And so he said, the cowboy said, I'm going down and see if I can get him. So he very quickly, or slowly, easily stalked his horse until, and the commentator said, I had my head on the rim rock and I was watching the whole scene. And he said, finally, the cowboy got close enough to the horse that he could speak and the horse would hear him. So he stood up and he started talking to the horse, and he was talking as hard as he could. And all the other horses, they stood up, they were panicked almost. They were standing there and looking at him. And finally, they all of a sudden, in a spur of a moment, they turned and they ran down the valley. And the stallion was there, and you could tell that he was going through all kinds of tension. He wanted to run with the crowd, and he started that way, and then he continued to hear the voice of his master, and so he'd come that way. And finally, he thought it looked like he was going to go with the crowd when he made a few steps, and then all of a sudden he turned around and he started toward his master. His neck was arched, and he came to his master. And when he came to his master threw his arms around his neck and put a rope around his neck, and the horse was nuzzling into his pocket looking for a sugar that he always gave. And they held each other, and the cowboy said that he'd even cried a little bit then, and they went their way, or they were together. And the commentator said, I put my head down on the rim rock, and I said, God, master of my soul, when I want to run with the wild crowd, help me to be aware of doing the right thing. Don't let me run with the wild crowd and follow maybe some of my passions, but let me do what my heart tells me I ought to do, the things that are right and things that are noble and things that are pure. That's true for all of us. We need to not run with the wild crowd. We need to run with the Master. I hope you'll do that this afternoon. God bless you.